Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and as Kraken fans, man, do we ever have a lot to be happy about and thankful for this year. Where last year we were just happy to have an NHL team in Seattle in the first place, but this year, not only do we have that, but they're in the middle, or at least towards the beginning, of their best season in franchise history. I know it's only been 2 seasons, but still, it's actually been a pretty good season up to this point. And not only that, but they're just finishing up now a homestand where they went 4-1-1 and finished it off in great fashion. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where I gotta be honest, I was kind of hoping this could be a shorter one. For one, I still have some things to get done for tomorrow. For another, my son has apparently entered the phase in life where he's a constant collector and then redistributor of germs, so I'm not feeling the best I've ever felt. I don't know if you'll be able to tell that from my voice. And as a result, I also just popped some NyQuil and kind of hoping we can get through this before that kicks in. I mean, even in spite of my track record, it shouldn't be too hard to keep at least one of these on the shorter end, right? After all we have to recap this time around is the highest scoring game in franchise history. It is an 8-5 win for the Kraken, but that means there were 13 goals in this one. 13. Oh boy, there's going to be a lot of screenshots. So with that in mind and a vat of tea in hand, let's get into it. Actually, I suppose before we get into it is also worth mentioning that the Kraken, since our last video, did send Shane Raitt down to the AHL level, which I would have done a separate video on by now if, again, I hadn't had the plague yesterday. But on top of that, he has already played 1 game with the Firebirds and scored a goal in it, so already looking pretty good at the AHL level, even with 1 game in, where he did get to play 13 minutes. He'll get to play 4 more games there, and then we'll get to see him back at the NHL level before he goes off to the World Juniors. Outside of that, we also got Jamie Alexiak back in the lineup, so the Kraken are once again fully healthy and got the team that we saw at the start of the season back out on the ice. Well, other than right, that is, but we already talked about that. Now, it is worth mentioning as we get into the game that as Kraken fans so far this season, and especially recently on this homestand, we have been a bit spoiled by the Kraken getting out to early leads, which unfortunately was not the case in this one. As 4 minutes into the game, it's the Sharks who end up striking first. It's a shot from the point that, credit where it's due, is tipped in very nicely by Couture out in front of the net. He gets his stick pretty far out from his body to deflect a shot that was going well wide, just between Jones and the post, to give the Sharks that early 1-0 lead. And then, to make matters worse, a couple minutes later, the Kraken send the Sharks to the power play for a too many men on the ice call. And while the Sharks may not be the best team in the NHL, in fact, to this point in the season, they're one of the worst, which was kind of expected coming into the season, that has nothing to do with their top end and has a lot more to do with the depth on the team. So when you send them to the power play and allow that top end to get focused out on the ice, yeah, it's not necessarily the situation you want to put yourself in too many times. Fortunately, the Kraken are able to kill this one off, and towards the end of it, get a too many men on the ice call in their favor, and go themselves to the power play. About a minute into which, they end up getting another penalty for a delay of game that was a puck that was shot, I think, from about center ice by one of the Sharks players, all the way over everything and into the netting behind the Kraken goal. An impressive distance that he was able to get on the puck, but it sends the Kraken to the 5-on-3, which 10 seconds into, a quick pass gets to Burakovsky. Burakovsky fires off a shot and buries it into the back of the net to give the Kraken, well, to tie the game at 1, and give the Kraken a power play goal early on in the 5-on-3, which still means that they have almost 2 minutes of power play remaining. 2 minutes of power play that they aren't actually able to score on, but still, it's good to score early on that 5-on-3 to maintain that extra power play afterwards. And at least to me anyway, it's this first Kraken goal on the 5-on-3 from Burakovsky that may have been the most savable goal that Kokkonen lets in this game. And look, I get that any game where 13 goals are allowed in, and where one of the goaltenders in Kokkonen's case has a .731 save percentage, is not going to be a game where the goaltenders are necessarily putting on a clinic of how to play the position. But at that, I don't necessarily think that either one of them played a terrible game either. Just in Jones's case, there's a couple of tips as we'll see that end up going in, and then in Kokkonen's case, he kind of gets left out to dry more times than not, which, to be fair, kind of happens with this one from Burakovsky, where his team went down 2 players, and anytime you're at 5-on-3, you're probably expecting the puck to end up in the net. From here, about halfway through the first period, through really the remainder of this first frame, the Sharks do probably get the better of the Kraken, certainly when it comes to offensive zone time and attempts on net, but they don't really get much of anything as far as dangerous scoring chances are concerned, as the Kraken are doing their thing in the defensive end, keeping everything to the outside, which the Sharks seemed perfectly content with, just sitting around the outside and passing it around and occasionally taking pot shots off from the outside, which, to be fair, they have already scored on one of those with a tip in front of the net. However, that isn't how they end up getting the second goal. That comes on a late Sharks power play, and it's a 4-on-3 opportunity on top of that, as right before this power play, there was traded roughing calls between Tanev and I want to say it was Nieto, but I could be wrong about that. Either way, it is a 4-on-3 opportunity for the Sharks late here in the first, and once again, when you let the Sharks put their 4 best players out on the ice with a man advantage, they might make you pay for it, as those 4 players are pretty good. And they show it here as Carlson goes up to Couture, back down to Carlson, across to Meyer, and he buries that crossing pass into the back of the net to put the Sharks back up by 1, and that's where the first would end, 2-1 going into the second. Now, to Seattle's credit, who did actually push late in the first in those final seconds after the late Sharks goal, they maintained that momentum into the second and into an early power play in the second period, where they are able to get set up a couple of times and get some shots off towards the net. The problem is none of them actually find the net area, or not very many of them anyway, and none of them are particularly dangerous scoring opportunities, as this power play does end up getting killed off. And besides, at least the Kraken power play didn't give up a shorthanded attempt, which they kind of have been doing a little bit too much of late, and on top of that, are able to maintain that momentum out of the power play. And it's a momentum that doesn't take long to find the back of the net and tie this game at 2. And it's pretty much all Matty Beniers on this one, except for actually being the guy that puts the puck in the net. He gets a pass by the Kraken blue line and just drives it into the Sharks' end of the ice, all by himself along the boards, drawing the attention of pretty much the entire San Jose defense, eventually from right behind the net, getting it out front to Dunn, who's able to get his stick on the ice and tap it into the net to tie the game at 2. A play that Beniers does pretty much all by himself once again, not quite coast to coast because it's blue line to behind the net and he doesn't actually score, but Beniers doing a lot of the work here and a beautiful pass to make it easy for Dunn to tie this game. The Sharks do quickly try to respond to this goal, but it ends up being the Kraken who end up responding to it. As they get the puck out of the zone and into the Sharks' end of the ice, Sprong is able to steal the puck from one of the Sharks' depth players, get it behind the net once again, get it out in front to Donato, and Donato is all alone with all of the time in the world to decide where he wants to put this puck, eventually opting to put it over the far pad and into the back of the net for his second of the season and his first in, I want to say, 11 games for him, which includes a couple of scratches off of the Stein. And we know this is a guy that can put pucks in front of the net. And just like that, where just over a minute ago, the Sharks had a 2-1 lead, it's now a 3-2 lead for the Kraken. And then, the next thing you know, 3 minutes later, Jones is headed to the Kraken bench on a delayed penalty, and with that 6-on-5 opportunity, just as you would draw up any good offensive strike, it's D-to-D, Schultz from up by the blue line, down and across to Alexiak, who's all by himself next to the net, and Alexiak tips in the pass, or banks it in off of his stick, into the back of the net, coming right off of that injury and right back onto the score sheet with his 4th of the season. Again, having just 1 last year, he's already got 4 this year, and this one makes it 4-2 Kraken. And I will say, again, the goaltending here may not have been the issue, as the San Jose defense kind of just leaves Kaukonen out to dry, where 2 of the 5 guys they have on the ice are on either side of Beniers. Meanwhile, nobody's on Alexiak. I mean, to be fair, why is a defenseman down by that in the first place? But you would think they'd probably put somebody on that blue shirt right next to their net. Instead, with that extra guy, I guess Alexiak finds a way to get lost, and he's able to capitalize off of it. Now, it may have also been for the best that Alexiak got this goal because, well, unfortunately, as I said earlier, this was an 8-5 game, and while the goaltending may not have been putting on a show, it was far from fully to blame for all of that scoring. And this time, it's Seattle's turn to have a bit of a blunder on the defensive end, where they've been fantastic for the most part defensively this season, but it's Alexiak who kind of forgets about Meyer, gives him a little bit too much open ice, and a pass gets to him, and with that open ice, Myers finds the back of the net to bring the Sharks to within 1. It's now 4-3, which it would stay until the end of the second. And sure, if you really wanted to nitpick Jones on this one, you could maybe point out that he left a little bit too much space on the glove side, which in this case is the near side, for Meyer to shoot at. But again, Meyer has a bit of a breakaway here, and not only is he a good goal scorer in the first place, in this case he also has the benefit of years of experience of practicing against this very same goaltender, as the two of them were in San Jose for a number of years together. Either way though, again, it shouldn't be anything to worry about, as the Kraken still do have a 1-goal lead heading into the third. And again, Jones really hasn't been playing all that bad this game, even with 3 goals past him to this point. So if the Kraken can just shore things up defensively, where again they've been strong all season, then this really shouldn't be all that difficult for them to be able to close out. Well, a minute into the third, the game is tied, and this one again is a bit of a tough one for Jones. There's one shot that comes from the outside through a lot of traffic that I think he makes a save on. It bounces off of something in front of the net. It could have been Jones or one of the Kraken defensemen. Either way, it bounces out to the other side, up along the boards, and another shot from the outside, this time through a lot of traffic, does find the back of the net. It's a tip that Jones, I think, sees the shot or where he thinks the shot is headed, so he goes off to the side, but then the tip sends it right back to where he was, and it ties the game at 4. So it's, yeah. Definitely not the start to the third period you'd like to see from the Kraken, but I will say, if there's one thing about this team so far this season, outside of maybe the solid defense and goaltending, that has been the most refreshing about this group from the one we saw last year, it's been their resiliency when it comes to bouncing back to stuff like this that really should swing momentum in the favor of their opponent. That's exactly what happens here, as the Kraken are able to press right back after this game-tying goal early on in the third, in a game where they had a 2-goal lead at one point. They press right back, not allowing the Sharks to build off of this goal, and sure enough, it leads to a Sharks defensive blunder where somehow they completely forget about Bjorkstrand, who gets behind the entire Sharks defense. Gord finds Bjorkstrand, and just like Donato earlier, he has all the time in the world in front of the net to figure out how he wants to put the puck in it. And a few moves later, for Bjorkstrand, who hadn't scored a goal since the first game of the season, he's able to go backhand over the pad and into the top of the net, roofing it to give the Kraken the 5-4 lead as they're back on top in this one. And again, here with Bjorkstrand, even in spite of having been recently moved out of the third and even for a little bit fourth line, his lack of goal scoring since that first game has not been due to lack of trying. And now that he's finally gotten one to go, you'd have to think that there's going to be a few more to follow over these next few games, and especially over the course of the rest of the season. And speaking of scoring a few more goals for the Kraken in this game, as this goal from Bjorkstrand only makes it 5-4 Kraken, and we know they end with 8, they've still got a few more goals to score in just this third period. And just like with the start of that scoring barrage in the second, right back here in the third, while the Sharks do press after the Kraken take the lead, Seattle takes advantage of yet another Sharks blunder defensively. This time it's a 4-on-2 opportunity for the Kraken. Beniers with the puck entering the offensive zone right down the middle, gets it out to Burakovsky on the side, and then goes up towards the net, taking the attention of one of those two defensemen with him. He still kind of stays up by Burakovsky, but following Beniers is a Larson going out to the other side of the net, taking the other defenseman with him, away from Schultz, who gets into the middle of the ice. Burakovsky finds Schultz in the middle of the ice, and with all the time in the world in the slot, he fires off a shot and puts it into the top of the net to give the Kraken the 6-4 lead. Now, with this goal from Schwartz, a small thing that I really liked about this goal in particular, outside of the fact that it once again gave the Kraken a multi-goal lead now here in the third, is the fact that he just took this shot when he had it from the slot. He, again, had Matty Beniers wide open next to the net, and Beniers, if the pass had gone to him, could have had a decent amount of time to, like Donato or Bjorkstrand just a little bit ago, try to find a spot to put that puck into the net, and with his talent, he probably would have been able to do so. But this is also exactly the type of situation that we've seen the Kraken pass their way out of a few too many times in their short history. So for Schwartz to just take this shot when he has it in a good scoring opportunity himself from the slot was a refreshing thing to see, and not going for that one extra pass. Again, it's very possible that the save is made here, but then there's a good chance that there's a rebound out to Beniers, who at that point has an even better chance of scoring than if a pass had gone to him. And even if the rebound goes out the other way, you've now got Larson on that side who could pick up a rebound and try to put it in himself. Obviously, though, neither of those rebound situations end up being necessary, as Schwartz just puts it in the back of the net himself, which is the other thing that can happen when you take those open shots. So then really the only bad news, or I guess just not extra good news in this case for the Kraken with this goal, is that unlike what happened in the second period, they aren't able to follow it up with another third goal a couple minutes later. Which for the Sharks is especially a good thing, because not only would that put them down 3 in the third, but they already spent their only time out of the game after the Kraken scored those 3 in the second. It turns out, though, that the Sharks don't end up needing another timeout to regain momentum after these back-to-back Kraken goals here early on in the third, as they're able to do that and then really maintain the momentum throughout the middle part of this third period, right up until the Kraken go for maybe not a terrible, but still not great line change. And then, right as the Kraken commit to the change, the Sharks attack immediately into the offensive zone, a quick couple passes, hurdle to LeBlanc up to Myers, catching the Kraken defense off of guard. Myers gets a little bit lost behind the play and has a lot of empty net to put his third goal of the game into, finishing off the hat trick and bringing the Sharks back to within 1. And again, really not a lot Jones could have done about this one. It's just Meyer getting lost in the defense and kind of poor defense by the Kraken that allows a high danger scoring chance from a high danger scoring player. And he makes them pay for it. Also, once again, though this time it's actually a good thing, the Kraken are able to respond, and while it takes them a little while, they at least slow down and even reverse that momentum a bit, evening things out, and eventually the Sharks take their turn to have the defensive blunder. It's this time a 3-on-2, and it's Soucy who gets the puck out to Beniers as he's entering the offensive zone all by himself, and Beniers with the entire middle of the ice in the offensive zone to himself. He just skates right up, dragging the puck to the net, and from the slot, fires an absolute laser into the top of it to give the Kraken the 7-5 lead, and at this point, it should be pretty hard for the Kraken to blow this one. Which, I know, even suggesting they could blow it is maybe a bit negative for what otherwise was a pretty positive game. They did already blow one 2-goal lead, and were in the process of blowing another one until Beniers pots this goal. So it's not necessarily totally out of question or ridiculous to suggest that the Kraken may have had one more defensive blunder in them that could have allowed this game to get tied had Beniers not gotten his third point of the game. And it also turns out not to be a ridiculous thing to say that the Kraken could give up another good scoring chance with the remainder of this game, considering just after Beniers puts this one in, they do exactly that. Literally seconds later, the Sharks push into the offensive end and get a very good chance from off to the side by the faceoff dot, and Jones has to make one of the most spectacular saves we've seen this season, and probably the flashiest save at that, as he ends up going full windmill, kicking his pad up in the air and making the pad save a few feet off of the ground, and the Kraken clean it up defensively after that. And eventually, with actually over 3 minutes left in the game, the Sharks do go empty net, trying to, I guess, claw back into this one, which seems a little bit odd considering they should be going for Bedard at this point. But either way, the Kraken don't really give them all that many good scoring opportunities with the empty net, and get a few chances to hit it themselves. Tanev has one denied, Eberle barely misses a pass that he could have put one in, a couple of guys put them off of posts, and eventually it's Schwartz who does also put it off the post, but this time it banks off the post and in to give the Kraken that 8th goal of the game. And that's where we finish with this one 8-5, as the Kraken once again finish off this homestand 4-1-1 and head out on the road, where they'll go up against the still division leading Golden Knights, and then division, well, the other end of the division with the Ducks. So then with that 8-5 final score, this game does kind of turn out to be one that doesn't really go the way the Kraken typically would plan a game to go. They definitely prefer to play things defensively and limit scoring opportunities, well, honestly, both ways, but they're trying to limit them the other way and then just take advantage of mistakes. In this game, they end up taking advantage of quite a few mistakes, but also make a few themselves. Still, it's good to know that this team can win more than one way, and that's just what they're able to do not only here, but on this homestand as a whole. Now, I will say that I'm not sure that this type of high-flying, high-event hockey is the type of thing that they'd like to try against teams like Vegas, who they play next, or even Edmonton in their own division, or even either Florida team who they still have to play. But they made it work here against the Sharks, And at the end of the day, 2 points in the standings is 2 points in the standings, where they now sit second in the division. Anyway, with it starting to get late on me here, or let's be honest, it was starting to get late when I started recording, so it's quite late now, and train of thought is hard to maintain, which is probably the NyQuil kicking in. Fortunately, my voice has managed to hold up pretty well, all things considered. Thanks probably to all that tea I made for myself. But either way, we still got to get through the 3 stars. The first 2 I think are pretty obvious. They were the first 2 stars of the game, both with 3 points in this game and both with a goal and 2 assists. The first, got to be Matty Beniers. He has probably the best play of this game with that first assist in the second period, driving it all the way into the offensive end and getting it out to Dunn. Also with a goal and his first 3-point game of his career. Then the second player being Andrei Burakovsky, again, 2 assists and a goal. So another great game from him. He continues to be a points producer for the Kraken and just constantly game in, game out, one of the best players out on the ice. And with the third star, I almost went Alexiak because he, again, does get a goal in his first game back from a somewhat extended stint on the IR. I guess it was only a few games in the grand scheme of things, but it seemed like a long time. He does, though, make a couple of mistakes that are knocking off some of that rust. So I think ultimately Dunn, who had a very solid game at both ends of the ice and does score that one from the Beniers assist that was that beauty in the second. So I think Dunn's well deserving and we'll get the 3rd star here. With that, again, I very much need to end this and get to bed and hopefully find some time to edit this before Thanksgiving stuff tomorrow. So if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section, and if you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I appreciate using them. And until the game in a couple of days in Vegas, stay safe out there, be good to each other, happy Thanksgiving, God bless, and go Kraken.